Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing another player guide. Today's champ we're going to focus on is Psylocke. She's a pretty cool champ and probably a little bit misunderstood by many. The guide is for new players coming into the game, or perhaps players who are just not familiar with her abilities. We'll be going over her pros, her cons, some gameplay, and just my general thoughts on what I think about the character. So let's get started. So the first pro we're going to take a look at with Psylocke is her ability to power control with her special 1. Actually, all her specials do some sort of power control, but we're going to focus on the special 1 right here. So let's take a look at some gameplay. So there's two ways you like to control power with Psylocke on the special 1. The first one is to reduce the special attack bar threshold. It's basically taking the opponent's power from one level and bringing it down to the next. When you do that, you gain a full bar of power yourself. So just watch her here. She does her 25% power drain. It goes down below his next power threshold, and you gain a full bar of power. So you just have to be aware that she only does 25% power drain, and you have to time it perfectly so it will go below his next power level, because if it doesn't go below, you don't gain the extra bar of power. Now you can do this through the whole fight. It's a little slower, but he'll never get the chance to do an SB1, which is kind of cool. The cooler ability of the special 1 is the bring the opponent down below the 0 threshold. You do that usually by baiting out a special, as we're going to see right here. He's very low power. I run in, do my SB1. I reduce his power by 25%. That brings him below the 0 threshold. And when he's at 0 and you have at least one size charge up, he will never gain power. You can go through this whole fight and just hit, and he will never gain 1 ounce of power. Now, the only way that he can gain power is if he strikes you. I'm not talking about parry, I'm not talking about block, I'm talking about an actual physical strike that gets through. So you can see this makes her very useful for a lot of champs. The ability to completely power lock the champ and have them never do a special is a very nice bonus. The next thing you have to understand is how to gain size charges. Size charges are used for power locking and for getting extra power and for doing extra damage on heavy attacks. So let's take a quick look on how to actually get size charges. So the first method to getting a size charge is when the opponent reaches a bar of power, as you can see right there. Every time the enemy gets a bar of power, you gain 1 size charge. They are stackable. The second way is when the opponent has 0 power and you hit 5 times. You gain a size charge every time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I got a size charge. It doesn't have to be a combo, it just has to be 5 hits. And the opponent has to have no energy. Now these size charges will be used later on for special 3s and for heavy attack damage. Now if you get hit when you have a size charge, like I did right here, you'll lose the size charge per the hit, but you also get a power gain. Now, it's not the best way to gain power, obviously, but if you happen to get tagged by the enemy and he has some size charges up, you'll notice your power bar go up quite quickly. We'll talk a little later on what the size charges actually do. We've already touched base a little bit earlier, but right now we're going to focus on the next pro, which is Psylocke's strong intercepting. So let's go into the gameplay. Personally, I find Psylocke a very fluid character. She's very easy to use, she's very quick. I find that kick can come out really fast. I think she's one of the better interceptors for me. Maybe not for everybody else, but I just love intercepting with this character. I find she's very fast, very quick, and she always hits the mark. Another great thing about her is when you can do your SB1 and you can bring someone to the power lock with no power, you can really take advantage of her ability to intercept. Now we'll see that coming up here. So right here we have a Joe Fixit in chapter 5. He's very aggressive, and I've already used my SB1, so he has no power gain. He's just going to keep on coming at me, and I just do a 4 hit, then bounce back, and then go back in and attack. And all this time I'm charging up my size charges as well, so I can do a big heavy attack later on. Again, we got a Yellow Jacket in the chapter 5 quest. He's very aggressive. See, the great thing that they're not getting any power from your SB1, so you never have to worry about being intercepted by a special attack. you can just do the backdraft intercept technique where it's 4 hits, go back, and then attack. So I think she's a wonderful champ for intercepting. So moving on from the pro strong intercepting, we're going to take a look at the special 2 and the special 3. We'll start off with the special 2, so let's jump into the gameplay. So the special 2 is a power lock for 6 full seconds. If you happen to have a size charge up and you connect, you will also receive 34% power back after the special 2 finishes. It takes about 0.25 seconds. Special 2 is probably your biggest damage dealer out of the 3 specials. Now there's 2 methods I like to use with the special 2, and we'll show them right here. So right now he's completely locked for 6 seconds, and I got my power back of 34%. And then I can go right in and do my special 1 and bring him right back down again. And once again, since my special 1 went below that threshold, I can continue it and keep it going. And now another way is if you can time it correctly, you can also use your power lock to bring him down to 0 by combining it with your SP1. So he's locked, he does his SP1, I run in and I do my SP1, bring him below the 0 threshold, and now he won't be able to gain power for the rest of the fight unless he actually hits me. So special 2 is pretty useful, so let's move on to the special 3. So when you're using your special 3, you have to be aware that it consumes all your size charges. For each size charge that is consumed, it does a 20% power burn, so basically it takes 20% off the opponent's power per size charge. It also does direct damage on how much power you take off, so the higher the power the opponent has, the more damage you'll do. If you happen to bring the opponent down to 0 in power, they will also stun them for 4.5 seconds, as you see here. If you have a mastery such as Petrify, you can make that a little longer. She gets in about 3 full rounds of attacks here, which is pretty nice. And much like the special 1, if they're brought down to 0, then you can keep on hitting them and they will not gain power unless they strike you. So it's a pretty cool ability. You just got to remember that it removes all your size charges, and sometimes you want to be saving those size charges for your heavy attack, which we'll talk about in the next section. It's a pretty cool animation. It's probably one of my favorites of the game. Probably be sticking to the SP1, the SP2 most of the time, but it's pretty cool. So let's move on to the next section. So moving on from the special 2 and special 3, we're going to be talking about the awakening and the heavy attack. So first off, the awakening, what you should know that Psylocke does not need to be awakened to be a great champ. The awakening is just a bonus. I'm just going to talk about it, not going to show any gameplay. Basically, you're reducing the opponent's defensive ability accuracy by up to 65% based on your SIG level when they have 0 power. So when the opponent has 0 power, and they use a defensive ability like evading or an armor up, you have a percentage chance to bypass that defensive ability. Now, also on her awakening ability, she can gain up to 857 bonus critical damage rating to lower your opponent's current power. So basically, the lower the power of the champ, the better critical damage rating you're going to get. So let's move on to the heavy attack. So I mentioned before that you can use all your size charges when you use the special 3, but you can also save them up. And when you save them up, you can do a heavy attack, because when you use your heavy attack, it consumes all the size charges, dealing 958 energy damage per charge consumed. So right now I've been building up charges by doing 5-hit combos on 0 energy. And I'm up to about 50 here, and I'm going to do my heavy attack right here. Boom, 48,884 points of damage. So in long fights you can really do some massive damage. Not the biggest damage in the game by far, but it's a nice ability if you're saving up and the opponent has 0 power. So now we're going to move on to some cons with Psylocke. The first ones we're going to look at is her damage output and her basic power gain. With her basic power gain, her regular attacks, you receive 25% less power. So you got to remember that. It's going to be a little bit slower to rev her up. Once you get your specials in play, and if you time them correctly, then yes, you can manipulate the power gain pretty good. But you just got to remember that her regular attacks are a little slower, and the power won't gain as fast as you're probably used to with other characters. Now you can change that up a little bit with a synergy with Archangel, but not everybody has Archangel, and you don't always want to bring him on your team, so just keep that in mind. So in regards to hitting power, how it works with Psylocke is the lower the opponent's power level, the harder she's supposed to hit. That happens to be when she's duped and non-duped. When she's duped, she's supposed to have a higher critical damage rating. But I had to be honest, I duped her about a month and a half ago, hoping to see a big difference in her hitting power, and I just didn't see it. It might be up a little bit, but I barely notice it. Now, this is an R3 5-star. I've seen an R4 5-star in play, and I was not too impressed by the amount of damage that she can do. So you really got to rely on your power control and your actual skill and gameplay. Yes, you can bring in some masteries such as Glass Cannon to perhaps up the ante and start hitting harder. But in reality, I just don't think she's a very strong champ for hitting power. So as you can see here with this Venom, I think I kill him in like 130 hits. That's quite a lot of hits for a character, even as a 5-star R3. So just keep that in mind that she's not going to go in and tear people to pieces, and she might be a tough character to bring in against a high-level boss that has lots of health. Okay, let's move on to the next con. So moving on from there, Psylocke has absolutely no immunities. She's not immune to bleed, she's not immune to poison, she's not immune to incinerate, she has no regeneration. So she's kind of a glass champion in that sense that you have to play pretty good. You're not going to be recovering healing, and you're not going to be shrugging off debuffs. So just keep that in mind when you're playing with her. So moving on to the next con, we're going to take a look at you can't stop the power gain ability in all the champs. And when I say that, I mean champs like Hyperion or Deadpool X-Force. You saw earlier in the video I could bring in a champ down to 0 power, and when that champ is at 0 power, they have no ability to gain power unless they hit you. You cannot do that with Hyperion because he has a natural power gain, as you see up there on the right hand corner. If I brought him down to 0, that power gain would basically bypass Psylocke ability. Now you can still take advantage of your specials, your SP1, your SP2, and your SP3 to control the power of the fight, but it's a little more tricky. I'd probably try to focus on SP2 if you can, because that will power lock him. Same goes with Deadpool. You would be able to bring him down to 0 power for a while, but once he has his power gain come into effect when he gets in lower health, you will not be able to stop that with your 0 power gain technique. So keep that in mind. Another thing you want to be aware of is certain nodes in war. The Spite node, not the Spite node, but the Strike Back node that I'm thinking about. I brought her in to test it. Basically, when you use a special attack and use 1 bar of power, your opponent gains 1 bar of power. Well, I tried to time it where I brought the opponent down to 0 power using my special 1, and I was hoping that he would not be able to gain power on the Strike Back, but it doesn't work. So Strike Back and Kinetic might not work as well as you would hope for. So you know, she's got some great power control, but it's got some limitations as well, so just be aware of it. So to sum up the cons and the video, I think Psylocke is a very useful champ. She's really cool to play, but she's just lacking that something special to be great. I've always loved Psylocke in the comic books, especially when they took her brain and they put it into a ninja assassin, and they gave her the Psi swords and the katanas and made her a complete badass. I was really hoping she'd be really cool in the video game as well. And she is cool, you know, she's got the cool intercepting, she's got the power control abilities, she looks pretty cool, she's pretty fluid. You know, I have nothing but good things to say on that front. But when you compare her to the other champs, her damage output is pretty low, in my opinion. You know, it's supposed to be higher because of her SIG ability, and it doesn't seem to do much. I find her power controls abilities useful, but they're limited in some areas, and I don't like that 25% less power every time you hit. I think they should just remove that completely. You know, she's a good champ, and will I R4 her one day? Maybe, just because I really love the character. Not quite yet, that's for sure. But you know, she's still useful for Alliance Wars on certain nodes. She's useful for Alliance questing. But you know, there's still better champs in my opinion. You know, who comes to mind would be Magic. Magic has that great power control, and she hits harder. So, you know, why would you use Psylocke when you can have that? Yes, you can bring an opponent down to 0, which is probably her biggest asset, and her SP3 is a lot of fun to watch. You know, it's really up to the player, but definitely she's not a hero for someone just to go in and just hit and punch. You have to learn how she works, what areas she would be best at, and how to manipulate her power control to your advantage. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, this is for the new players and people not familiar with her. Please feel free to add your comments and your suggestions and likes and dislikes, and of course subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate the support. And we'll move on to the next guide, and I'm not sure who I'm going to do next, maybe Medusa. But that's it, guys, so take care and we'll talk to you soon.
Target identified. Analysis complete. Please subscribe.